This podcast is intended to provide general information about various recent developments in employment law and human resources best practices. Nothing in this presentation or in the comments of Ms. Johnson, Ms. Shannon, or any guest should be considered as the rendering of legal or other professional advice, and it is not directed at any specific cases or circumstances. Listeners are responsible for obtaining the necessary advice about their specific situations from their own counsel. These materials are intended for educational and informational purposes only. The presentation and these materials represent the opinions of the participants and not those of their law firms or companies. No part of these materials may be printed, photocopied, or otherwise reproduced, recorded, or stored, or transmitted in any form and by any means, electronic, mechanical, or otherwise, without the prior written permission of Today's Workplace podcast. Welcome to Today's Workplace, a podcast created to keep employers current on the latest employment law trends while providing proactive solutions to the everyday issues arising in today's rapidly changing workplace. Is your business prepared for today's workplace? Let's find out with your hosts, Barbara Johnson and Belinda Reed-Shannon.
During our last episode, we had a great discussion with John Geyer and David Cohen of DCI Consultants. John and David provided us with great insight into the data analytics and diversity metrics employers are using to support their employment compliance and diversity strategies. Today, we're pivoting to the entertainment industry and taking a rare look at the world behind the camera and examining the evolution of that unique workplace. We are absolutely thrilled to have Sean Joell Johnson join us to talk about diversity in the entertainment industry and its response to the current movement for social justice.
Sean Joell Johnson is an accomplished lawyer, award-winning television producer, and former network executive. He is the head of business and legal affairs for Fuse Media, home of the Fuse and FM television networks and Fuse.tv. Fuse is in 60 million homes. FM is 43 million homes. Sean oversees all business and legal activities for the network, as well as its standards and practices department. Prior to that, he was most recently of counsel to the boutique law firm Taylor Lewis, LLP in New York City, and the principal of Left Center Entertainment, LLC, a television and digital production company. Sean's experience includes over 10 years as vice president of business and legal affairs for MTV Networks, managing business and legal matters for the creation, distribution, and marketing of intellectual property across all media, including television, feature film, home entertainment, and digital.
Welcome to Today's Workplace, Sean. We'd really like to hear more about your professional background and how it brought you to the exciting work you do in the entertainment industry as a lawyer, producer, and head of business affairs for a media outlet.
When I started my legal journey, I'd always wanted to be in the entertainment field. I had been a business manager at a nonprofit arts organization after college. And, while I enjoyed the work, and I enjoyed our ability to showcase, some amazing talent. What I didn't like was the fact that I wasn't getting paid anything as the business manager. So one of my mentors who was on the board of directors suggested that I go to law school and basically said, if you like what you're doing now, get that law degree and, maybe they'll put a zero behind it. Yeah, that's okay. That would have made a life difference for me at the time. So when I went to law school, I didn't really get caught up in sort of like the firm, the drive to go to a firm. I spent my first summer at Paramount Pictures and my second summer at Motown Records. I worked my whole third year at BET, which was just starting out. And I had really gotten my feet wet in entertainment. I went to a firm right after law school, but I think that was more peer pressure than anything. And I quit 4 months later.
Wow.
Yeah. Just because I was mad. I was calling my mom upset every day. And my mom's like, "Well, will you just quit that job, boy, what is wrong with you if you don't like it? And I was like, but I'm making all this money. I've never made this much money before. She's like, you're miserable, quit. So I did. As luck would, I got lucky because BT had two lawyers that just left at the same time, and I knew the system. And so Deborah Lee brought me in. Deborah Lee, she actually hired me as an attorney, and I worked for her and a woman named Marita Coley, who was a big mentor of mine as well, for 2 years, and then we did a joint production with MTV, and I got along really well with the lawyers there. It certainly was MTV's heyday, and I had always wanted to live in New York, and I went up there and I spent 10 years at MTV, overseeing the Video Music Awards, all the business and legal, MTV News and Docs, all those beach house shows and True Lives, and Osbournes, and like I did all those kind of deals and production, like day-to-day production legal on that. And I just got the bug to go into to becoming a creative, because when you listen to production people talk, when you listen to creative people talk, and when you're a lawyer, people tell you you're not really creative. It's kind of like just, tell us what the contracts are. And but after a while, you're like, wait a minute, I do have an idea that can make this a little better. And after a while, that kind of seed just grows. And it was like, I really wanted to get over into the, move on to the creative side. And the company was flexible enough at the time that I was given the opportunity to. And so then I spent 10 years as a producer. BT was also part of Viacom. So I went over to BT and became head of programming strategy for the BTJ Centric channel, and executive produced a bunch of shows, got nominated for an NAACP award, won a GLAAD award, produced a couple films. And then I got tired of all that hustle. I was like, you know what? I was a good lawyer. Let me do a stage left and go back to something that I know that I like, that doesn't have the emotional highs and lows that being a producer has. And so it's been about 8 years since I've been back as a lawyer. So I guess the funny thing is that when I wanted to become a producer, everybody was like, he's just, he's a lawyer, just, he'll go back to being a lawyer in a minute. And then all of a sudden I was a producer and people forgot that I was a lawyer. And then when I became a lawyer again, it's like, aren't you a producer? And so, I like to think that I kind of work with both sides of my mind equally. And I like, my current position, running business and legal affairs for Fuse, allows me to do that. And the entertainment industry is changing so much, in all kinds of ways, from the what you see on the screen, to who's behind the camera, to actually seeing more people who look like me and you.
When we think about the entertainment industry, most people are very familiar with the entertainment industry and what happens in front of the camera. But your career has given you a great perspective beyond the camera lens. Can you tell us more about the business of entertainment and the opportunities that it presents?
Yeah, I think most people think that, when they think entertainment, they just think producer, director, and then on-air talent, actor, actress, voiceover, host, or, being some kind of like unscripted character in a reality series. But there's so much more that goes into it. And so much more that goes into just putting something together. There's the ideation of what actually makes a good show, which is a development team. And almost every production company and every network has one, where they just sift through ideas and what's in the zeitgeist at the moment, what would people be drawn to. There are, the people who handle the logistics. How do you get from A to B when you're doing a production? How do we move from city to city? That's production management. They are the glue to any production. They handle all of the logistics and are basically fixers when things go wrong. You have your wardrobe people, who's got to dress everybody. You got your script supervisors who have to make sure that everything is consistent throughout the whole show. You have your writers who actually put a script together. You have your casting people who cast people. You have your sound guys. Like anything you can think of, they're outside of the entertainment industry, there's usually something where you can use your skills that are outside and use them someplace on the inside. It's just that I think sometimes people they don't see the big picture. They see it's more bright lights, big city. It's really not just that. Like there's the people, when you see a logo, people have to come up with the logos. You see those graphic packages that you watch right before you watch a show. That's a whole separate department that does that. And then, you have your marketing. Once the show's done, you have your marketing activations, people approaching brands that they then complement a series. Audience outreach, who likes what and who should we be targeting, developing partnerships. There's so much that goes in. And then even then, there's more, because once like a series has been on a network, the idea is that you still want to keep monetizing it. So where else do we go? What other international channels would like this show? How do I reach them? How do I do deals in other countries?
I was going to ask in all of that, because that's very, very fascinating. And people rarely think about the depth of opportunity in different roles and different parts of creating content and putting it in front of a screen, in front of a market and an audience in a successful way. I was going to ask, what are the power positions in all of that?
The power positions are always the heads. So the writer, if it's a scripted show, it's always the writer. If it's an unscripted show, it's usually the producer or the director. If it's a film, and you're going through a film company, it's who's the distributor, who's buying it. If you're a network, it's who's your development exec, because they'll give you enough notes to drive you crazy until they get what they want. And you'll have to keep going back and doing it, because even though you have an idea of what you want your program, series, commercial, whatever it is to be, they have the final say because they're the ones who bought it. There's no like free creative reign when somebody pays for it. You have to give them a product that they feel like they've gotten their money's worth. But yeah, the power players are the bigger positions that you hear about. But you need everybody to make it work. It's a team. Like entertainment and production and creation, it's about teamwork. It's about finding the team to help you move to the next level and help you to move forward.
So when we think about the diversity, because that's a big topic in entertainment nowadays, the diversity of the entertainment industry, can you describe what you've seen? Because you've been at it for a good bit of time in working in all aspects of it. What have you seen in terms of the levels of diversity, and how have you seen it evolve, or is it not really evolving the way we would expect it to?
When I started MTV, I was the first Black lawyer they had. So things have changed a lot. I mean, one of the things, even when I left there were across, MTV networks, there were a lot of people of color. Things have moved, they just haven't moved fast. And then it's like, even when they have moved, it's the upper levels that they haven't moved to, right? So, you may have your entry, I don't want to say entry, but entry and mid-level where it looks good, like as far as like diversity and inclusion. But then as soon as you start stepping up, it fades away. And I think this happens across in other industries and in other fields. Once once the ladder goes up, you may have a couple of associates every year, but who makes partner, right? So, it's the same situation. And I also think that's accompanied by some frustration. And the one thing that the entertainment industry is known for, it's just the truth is that, there is a lot about who you know and your connections. Mm-hmm. And, because what I said earlier about it being like sort of a team, it's very enclosed. This is a very enclosed environment. And people want to work with people who they know and they like. And so it perpetuates itself unless you force them to start looking at other people and thinking about other people.
I was going to ask, why is the entertainment mostly white and mostly male at the upper levels? And maybe that's part of the reason, or do you have any more insight?
Well, yeah, I think it's a little bit of a sort of like the bro culture, you help me and, and then, we'll go hang out, and it perpetuates itself. You got to think, we're not like, it's not just different. You're not just bringing in a person who just looks different than you, right? You're not just, the idea anyway, is that you're not bringing in a person who's just like you, except for they're Black. You're bringing in somebody from another culture and another community who, when they leave, they have another culture and community and identity that they actually kind of relish being a part of. That's different from yours, And so the idea is that you have to appreciate that. as opposed to saying like, we all need to go here and have a beer after work. It's like, no, somebody's got to go, take care of their kids. I mean, I think that's why it was initially like a male business, I mean, for the most part back in the day, most of the men were working. And they didn't have the same constraints, and women weren't in the workplace as much. And so that kind of led to itself, if you knew somebody who liked you, they could move you around, and that's the same way it is right now, actually. But it's better. Like I have moments where I bitch a lot, but it's changed, and it'll continue to change, and we have to be change agents.
Given what you described as, at least historically, the industry being mostly white, mostly male, what issues did the social justice Black Lives Matter events of last year highlight for the entertainment media industry?
I mean, it was Variety or Hollywood Reporter did a report on top executives at a number of production companies, studios, networks. And, it's kind of like sometimes, res ipsa, thing speaks for itself. We weren't there. In some networks, we weren't there at all. So, I think the problem that happens, and especially when you get a bunch of more senior executives of color, is that one of the things that every so often there's something that causes the chatter. Oscar's so white. All of a sudden we got to change that. You know what I mean? And we have to do things. But the report cards come out every year, and what's it, the NAACP report card. And, there's not much movement when you look at that report card. It's just a lot of chatter and talk. And so, for me, it's noise until things actually change. But look at Charles King, first Black producing team, him and Ryan Coogler and Shaka King. I mean, that's amazing, right? It's unbelievable that it's now, right? In 2021, we're talking about the first Black producing team. Behind the mountains, there are other mountains, old Haitian proverb.
So talk about some of the ways that you've seen then the entertainment industry respond. What are some of the different things beyond statements that you've seen happen, and how have those things impacted opportunities for people of color in the industry, and how has it impacted what we're about to see in terms of differences in content creation?
Well, I think that, we're entering a new phase in entertainment, and the creative is really powerful now. And so you have the inclusion writers. You have people demanding that when they walk onto a set, that there are people that look like them. And they make it known now more than ever. You have talent. Especially African American culture, it is culture. People don't like to say it, but that's the truth. And the creators who are, you've seen the Shonda Rhimes deal and everybody else, the money that they're getting for the kind of deals they're doing. If you are the creative, if you are the writer, you have power now. And I think that's a paradigm shift before, because it used to be the production companies and the networks had all the power, but now it's individual brands that people are building that really they're being able to kind of harness a certain influence. And that's interesting to watch it. And it's nice when you have people speaking out, when you have people being political. You look back at people like Harry Belafonte, Muhammad Ali, and you know how they spoke out. And then you had this kind of dearth of nobody saying anything. And now it feels like people are at least, saying their piece on what's going on in the world today.
Yeah. Have you seen an impact yet in terms of beyond the writers, which I agree with you, every other day we're seeing, news of a big deal that the networks and streaming companies and cable companies are striking with either actors or showrunners or writers who have been at this game for a while. But what about the crafts, behind production? There's hundreds and hundreds of crafts. But, having ushered, a young person through the industry, I can say on the vast majority of opportunities he's been at and the sets he's been on, you don't see much diversity at all. So are the crafts benefiting yet from this new consciousness?
I would say it's still hard. I think the percentages are still low. I mean, if you're talking about the day-to-day numbers, I don't think they're there yet at all. What I was initially talking about is sort of the impact and the sort of the perception and the way people are viewing things and the actual numbers of these deals. But I think on the day-to-day, when you're talking about like IATSE, like one of those unions, I mean, you're not going to see that many people of color. And part of it is because, what I said, it's somebody brings you on, you work a couple of union jobs in your union, but somebody has to reach out, and bring you in. And I think that's where the issue lies, because they would prefer to bring in people who look like them.
Sean, what is a deal in the industry, and what are you seeing in terms of the dollars entertainment and media are now investing in projects led by creators and producers of color? You touched on that a moment ago, but could you expound on it a little more?
Yeah, well, I mean, that is the hardest question, because everything you do is kind of a deal, right? If you have an actor who's appearing in a film or a TV show, and you have negotiated their compensation and their rights to a project, that's a deal. You have a writer who's doing it, that's a deal. If you are trying to get funding for film and you're able to do it, that's a deal. Deals always look different. There is no deal. It's just kind of like what you're thinking about. For example, if I was just going to take the VMAs or something, an award show, every performer who shows up you've got to do an agreement for them. Usually it involves some kind of allowance. And then, the bigger issue is how do you, rights and rights restrictions. Each separate one, each performer has their own team of lawyers, high-powered lawyers. Like sometimes you're like, wow, gotta go from this one to this one to this one to this one. But, for that lawyer, that's their big client. And so it's not like they're gonna fall over and give you what you want just because, you're at the network. It's like, that's not the way it works. And that goes down the line when you're dealing with like a TV series or film, anything that you have to staff. Like you're negotiating, in sort of like my position is you're always, going back and forth. Like some things are routine. Like, it's like this is how long you're working, this is how much money it is, and this is your credit. And then other things when you get to, and this usually depends on you're either not paying them enough, and so they want more, and so you have to like divvy up what's coming, or they're at a level where, which certain people get to, where it's like, no, you don't. I just don't show up. I need to participate in this meaningfully after my participation done, because I'm the reason why it's going to sell.
One of the ways that your business has changed dramatically is with the use of digital media as opposed to, say, the old days. How does the change toward digital impact the ability of people of color to enter into the industry and be recognized in the industry?
I think it may, to a certain extent, I think the sort of the rise of the streamers has helped people of color. Like just because there's more avenues, there's more outlets, and the churn with the SVODs, with the subscription, the Disney Plus, the Netflix, and even in the smaller ones like Stars and BritBox, people jump on, watch the shows, and jump off, and so that's what they call the churn. So you need to keep shows on your service that attract subscribers and keep subscribers. Mm-hmm. And so that means that you have to like do a lot of research. And if you're broad-based, you need to be able to keep your specific audiences. So your Latinx audience or your Black African, your AA audience, you need to keep them from January to December. You don't want them like January, then like giving you a 2-month break, then coming back, like you're not going to make any money that way. And so one of the ways you do that is you provide authentic programming that they're going to that they're going to keep subscribing to watch. So, I mean, I think that has created definitely opportunity, because if you don't service them, it's not like broadcast or cable. If you don't service them, they'll just stop paying and go somewhere else to somebody who is. I mean, so it's immediate. I think what some of these streaming companies have to do, but I also think that the big play, like remember like syndication, like you would have your show go for 5 seasons and then you syndicated, you make 5. All of that's gone because all these companies are vertical now. Like they're like, we own it. We're not selling it to anybody else. We're not letting it go on any other service. We're keeping it in the family. So all of a sudden, there's no money. You got to get your money up front because there's no money on the back end. It's gone. So, that kind of like, big game situation, that's done. So like, and that's why you see some of the bigger deals announced, because these big major entertainment companies are keeping the show. They're not going out. They're not sitting, it's not going to syndication and then it's not going to a network and then going to a cable network, as their exclusive and then going to syndication. It's like, it doesn't work like that anymore.
So I guess, and maybe I don't understand it correctly, but going into syndication was like one of the most lucrative ways to monetize an asset. So how do these companies that own the content, how do they then monetize beyond, the run of that particular show?
Well, it has value as part of their library, as part of their service, right? I mean, that's what's keeping people. Like, you have to build your library. People are subscribing to these services because of the content that they have on them. There's a value attached to having, I think, Friends just on Peacock, as opposed to letting everybody else have it. You actually have to watch it. So, I think the problem comes in is there's so much content and there's so much clutter, and it's like, what breaks through? And part of it is also the amount of marketing dollars you have to put in to make something stand out. So, I mean, so much good stuff is dead on arrival because you've never heard of it.
We talked about how, not a whole lot of diversity in the industry. And then we go through this social justice shift and change in our communities, in our society. Businesses responded. And so in order for, so businesses responded, by opening up opportunity, by making donations to social justice organizations. But I really would like to get your insight on what you believe to be kind of like the most fundamental structure changes that the entertainment industry needs to make in order to ensure a more sustained level of success for the diverse talent, creatives, producers, craftsmen, and business people that are in the industry.
I think that each of the different, like, certainly some of the specific services that people provide, you have to bring people in. Like, you have to, like, it can't be, I hope we find somebody. That doesn't work, because a lot of people don't know about the opportunity. Because they only see the bright lights, they only see the big names, and they don't know the other opportunities that exist. And they're not in a place where they will find out. The entertainment sometimes is its own closed off world. Like, it kind of leads into itself. Like, somebody like you, that almost everybody is in it, and it perpetuates itself that way. Like, I mean, so it's like somebody who's just interested, they don't know what they could be unless you tell them, unless you provide opportunities, because one of the things that I always saw was that internships, which always lead to entry-level positions, like, it's very hard. Because, I mean, my summers, I needed money. I couldn't work for free. Like that wasn't even an option. So for me, like, concrete things like providing stipends for students during the summer so they can actually, like, take those jobs. Because those leads to that's how you start developing a network. That's how you start developing relationships. That's where you hear what's going on. And when you can't do that, then you're like locked out. So, it needs to start like early on. And a lot of, people grow together in this business. So it's important to like have people have a critical mass of diverse people starting out together. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of it. Like, I mean, I had friends who, their parents were just paying for everything. They were just having fun. They were kind of working a couple of days a week, kind of not. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm Monday through Friday, So you can see it because, this kind of like, you're not in the room, right? You're not even next to the room. You're not even getting an introduction to anybody in the room. Mm-hmm. And that's what these kids are getting, and that's the leg up. And this is an impacted industry. Everybody wants to do entertainment. This isn't like, oh, I want to be in entertainment, and people go, oh, here's the job. No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You have to network. You have to know people. You have to develop a skill set. You have to make them want to take you in. It's not like, I'll send in my resume and I'll just get hired. It doesn't work that way. Too many people want to be in the industry.
What you said, Sean, is so interesting because it resonates with a lot of what we've heard from other guests, which is that this has to be intentional. It's not going to happen by itself, right? Because it is very much kind of, we called it the bro culture, right? You know somebody and you call that person, and then that person calls that person. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of diversity in that network. And so unless you're really intentional about making the opportunities known, creating the pipeline, you're going to keep getting what you've always gotten.
Absolutely.
I think we all agree on that one, Barbara. So how about giving us a last word, Sean? What do you think are the 3 things we can expect to see differently from the entertainment industry during this era of growing diversity behind the cameras?
Well, I think there's a unique opportunity because a lot of barriers have been broken down where people are able to build themselves as a brand, as a talent. Of course, everybody's doing it, so that's part of the problem. But I mean, there will be people who emerge successfully from that. And I think that changes the game because companies go after them because of who they are, as opposed to going after them saying, we're going to make you. So I think that changes the leverage and that leads to better deals. I look forward to seeing what happens in the next 2 years with all these streaming platforms. Like, there's only so much you can watch. Mm-hmm. And yet, a lot of people, me probably included, I will still spend a half an hour on Netflix trying to figure out what I want to watch. As opposed to watching something. And that could be any platform. So I think there's going to be a shakeout because, like, there's just too much content, and I mean, I don't know how a lot of these companies can be able to sustain themselves. And I think that the one thing that we always know is that, something's going to happen that we never expected. I would say prepare for the unexpected. I mean, things have to change, like, because of the way they're doing in like theatrical windows now, like movie theaters will have to come up with a way to play because the windows are shorter and the amount of money they're making is less. What does that mean? What does your theater experience become? I mean, they have to reinvent themselves to survive and be successful. So, I mean, I think that's going to be interesting. It's all a new world. The way technology is shifting, the way people are shifting, just the idea that we're sitting here, like, years ago, we wouldn't be sitting here having this podcast that goes out to everybody, right. Looking like we do.
All right. That part.
Yeah, things are changing and they're going to change. And, what I think is I think personally is what you try to do is be on the right side of the fight.
Sean, we would like to thank you for providing us with so much valuable insight about the evolution and major issues of diversity in the entertainment and media industry. It's been a fascinating conversation, and you've shared so much valuable information about the industry and how it operates. We thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Today's Workplace with Barbara Johnson and Belinda Reed-Shannon. If you like what you heard, click subscribe so you don't miss out on future updates and episodes. For more information about today's episode, check out todaysworkplace.com. That's TODAYSWORKPLACE.com.